Imagine this: you're minding your own business and suddenly someone knocks at your door, claiming they have authority to take you away because of a complaint that isn't even real. But what you don't know is that this person has no idea who you really are or the power you hold, and as they come closer to arrest you, everything changes in an instant. The power dynamic flips, and the very ones who tried to control you become powerless themselves, and you watch as the whole story unfolds. This isn't just any ordinary story. This is about justice and the truth that will shock you to your core. Stay tuned, because what happens next is beyond belief. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. It was a quiet afternoon when the doorbell rang. Marcus, a man in his 30s with a calm demeanor and a focused mind, walked to the door expecting nothing out of the ordinary. He was a federal officer, a man of authority, but like most people, he enjoyed his privacy and the simplicity of his home. He wasn't expecting any interruptions, and he certainly wasn't prepared for what would unfold in the moments that followed. As he opened the door, he was greeted by a woman in her mid-40s with a stern expression and an official-looking uniform. Her name was Karen, and she had a mission, one she believed was righteous. But what she didn't know was that her target wasn't just any man. She was about to make a very dangerous mistake without even realizing it. Karen, a member of the local homeowners association HOA, had been receiving complaints about Marcus' property. The details were vague at best, but in her mind, that didn't matter. She had already decided that Marcus was in violation of HOA rules, and now she had come to enforce those rules at any cost. She didn't care about the facts or Marcus' side of the story. In her world, the rules were clear. You either followed the HOA's guidelines or you paid the price. And when she saw an opportunity to assert her power, she grabbed it with both hands, unaware that the man standing before her wasn't some ordinary homeowner. He wasn't someone who would back down to intimidation or false accusations. Without giving it a second thought, Karen pulled out a piece of paper she claimed was an official order from the police to arrest Marcus for his alleged violations. She handed it to him, expecting him to comply without question. But there was one problem. She wasn't dealing with just any man. She was dealing with a federal officer. Marcus stood there momentarily stunned, trying to process what was happening. The words she spoke were almost foreign to him. Arrest. He hadn't done anything wrong yet. Here she was standing at his door with an arrest order from someone who didn't even know him or the law he represented. It didn't make sense, but Karen seemed to think she had all the power in the world to make it happen. Thought of being falsely accused and arrested struck a nerve deep within Marcus. He had dedicated his life to upholding justice and serving the public. He had sworn an oath to protect and defend the law, and yet now the very system he had worked so hard to protect was being used against him in a way that felt deeply wrong. It was a violation of everything he stood for. The frustration and anger began to bubble up inside him, but he didn't show it. On the outside, he was calm, collected, and steady. He had learned long ago how to maintain control in tense situations, and now more than ever he needed to keep his composure. Marcus took a breath, and with a calm voice he asked Karen to show him the official documents. For a moment Karen hesitated, her grip on the paper tightening, as if the physical act of holding onto the document would somehow give her the authority she needed. She clearly wasn't prepared for Marcus' calm demeanor. His quiet confidence threw her off guard. She had expected a man who would panic or protest. But Marcus wasn't that man. He had seen far too many things in his line of work to be intimidated by someone like Karen. His mind was already working through the situation, analyzing every move and waiting for the right moment to strike back. But Karen wasn't finished. She wasn't going to back down easily. She believed that she was in control, and she wasn't going to let a simple man stop her from doing her job. You have to come with me. It's in the HOA's best interest, Karen barked at Marcus. She stood there with an air of authority, expecting him to cower and obey, but Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he looked at her with a calm gaze, his eyes showing no sign of fear or hesitation. The silence between them stretched for what felt like an eternity. Before Marcus spoke, he wasn't angry. He wasn't even raised his voice. He simply stated, "I'm afraid you've made a mistake." The words hung in the air between them as Karen's expression shifted slightly. The tension in the moment grew thick as she realized that her authority had just been challenged. She had no idea who she was dealing with, and in that moment she was about to find out that the man standing before her wasn't someone she could push around. As the moments passed, Marcus remained unfazed by Karen's increasingly aggressive tone. His mind was already working through the situation, analyzing every move. He had been trained to handle difficult situations, but nothing quite like this. Karen, on the other hand, was growing more anxious. Her confidence began to waver as Marcus remained calm. And unbothered by her so-called threats, it was clear that she had underestimated him. Karen thought that with enough force and loud words she could make Marcus bend to her will, but she hadn't counted on his unshakable calm demeanor and his deep understanding of authority. She had expected a man who would crumble under pressure. Instead, she was facing someone who had seen it all and stood firm in the face of adversity. "You don't understand. I don't have time for this," Karen snapped at him. But Marcus remained silent. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't going to let her rush him into a decision he would regret. He had all the time in the world to make the right choice, and he wasn't going to let her dictate the terms of the confrontation. The game had changed, and Karen was slowly realizing that she was no longer in control. Her tone was rising in desperation, but Marcus remained calm. Each word she spoke seemed to lose its impact as he stood there steady and composed. She had thought she could intimidate him, but it was clear now that he wasn't someone who could be easily shaken. Still, Karen persisted, her voice rising in volume. "You're not above the law," she shouted. "You have no choice but to come with me." But Marcus wasn't intimidated in the slightest. He had heard threats before, and he knew how to deal with them. He wasn't afraid of the law being used as a weapon against him. Instead, he stood his ground in a calm, collected voice. He replied, "I am the law." The words were simple, yet they carried an undeniable weight. The power shift was palpable. Karen could feel it. Her hands trembled slightly as the realization of what she had just tried to do began to sink in. The look on her face shifted from arrogance to confusion, as if she had just realized the mistake she had made. That moment, Marcus reached into his pocket, pulling out his federal badge. It gleamed under the sunlight, a symbol of the authority. He held. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. She had just tried to arrest a federal officer, and now she realized the gravity of her mistake. Her hands shook as she stared at the badge. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Until now, her confidence shattered. Her facade of power crumbled in an instant. The silence that followed was deafening as Karen realized that she was no longer in control. She had tried to assert her dominance over a man who could destroy her with a single phone call. But Marcus wasn't finished. He took a step forward, his presence now commanding the room. "You're making a very serious mistake," he warned her. "You've overstepped your boundaries, and now you'll have to face the consequences." Karen's face turned pale, the reality of her situation sinking in. She had never expected this. She had never thought that the man she was trying to arrest would turn out to be someone who held more authority than she ever could. Karen had sent a fake police officer to intimidate Marcus, but now she was the one being intimidated by the real thing. As the realization set in, Marcus didn't wait for her to process it all. He calmly called his supervisor, alerting them to the situation. Within minutes, the real police arrived, and Karen found herself in a situation she had never imagined. The tables had completely turned. The once self-assured HOA member was now on the receiving end of justice. She had tried to control the situation with threats and lies, but it was Marcus who had the last word. The lesson was clear: you couldn't bully your way into power without facing the consequences, and Karen would never forget the lesson Marcus had taught her. Justice had been served, but it had come at the hands of someone who wasn't afraid to stand up for what was right. If you want to hear more unbelievable stories like this, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to QZ Stories for more powerful content.